Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. That is right, my friends. That is the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution under the Bill of Rights, which it means government keep out. Greetings, my fellow freedom lovers and sovereign thinkers. This is LL3's newest podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful swampy mangroves of South Florida, and today's date, Friday, February 24th, 2017. Do a quick little plug-in before I proceed. I'm at CJ's Java Lounge, located at 400 Southwest 1st Avenue in the Yacht Club building, right along the New River of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, on the southwest end of the Andrews Avenue Bridge. The reason I decided to address that is because it is escalating on the battle of freedom of speech, or the press, and so forth. A lot of good folks out there are being harassed, detained, being censored, which is completely unacceptable, and I condemn it with a passion. Basically, this show will be mainly about the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, and a couple of articles, and some great input. It looks like I have a little download issue on my computer, but I'm gonna have to hopefully get that revive it as soon as possible. But I will put these footnotes in there, and you can actually read and listen for yourself. Okay. Okay. Well, speaking of the First Amendment, which is very essential, like the rest of our natural-born rights in our Bill of Rights culture within the United States. Plus, you got folks out there protesting, using violence, destroying property to say, we're going to resist them. They make themselves look great. I've seen some of these disgusting videos from groups like Resist, and I am not impressed by them at all. That's right, I'm calling you vultures out, and many others that hate freedom with a passion, and you think you're doing it for my own well-being. You're not. I am not your number. I am not your bellboy, nor some piece of property. I'm a freedom-loving, sovereign-thinking individual, and I'm very damn well proud of it. You're just an example of these disgusting clowns that want to take away my natural-born rights. You can never do that. Never, ever. At least one thing I know for sure. I'm out there protesting or doing my activism. I am not hired to be there. I always find my ways of getting around to make it happen. People try to call me out, but they fail the test. They assume poorly. A couple of them actually apologize, which is great. I have no bad blood towards them. But others out there, I can give 2 pieces plus of cow manure. Or gator manure would be better. It's a lot more potent, as far as I'm concerned. Yes, I am a little bit vigilant today. I can be a little bit of aggressive. However, this has to be addressed. So, we're going to be narrating on mainly freedom of speech and the press. Of course, mainly the rest of the essential amendment, which is still enumerating, regardless. So, I just had to take the initiative on looking through, and I remember from this one gentleman named David J. Shestokas. He has a website, shestokas.com, and he's very fantastic at what he wrote, and what he addresses and what it means. He's just an example of like-minded individuals, which I always admire their work on our natural-born rights, culture, etc. We're going to talk about the First Amendment to the Constitution, freedom of the press. As it reads here, like freedom of religion and freedom of speech in the United States, the concept of freedom of the press as it's developed has been uniquely American. Along with free speech for the general population, it is surely the source of what has become known as American exceptionalism. American exceptionalism. Alexis de Tocqueville originally referred to the United States as an exceptional country in 1840. His reference and analysis dwell on many special aspects of the American situation regarding location and resources, driving the people to practically over art or science. The phrase American exceptionalism actually was coined in the 1920s by Joseph Stalin, and a dispute as to why the United States did not fit with the Marxist view of history. Well, because I'm not some ungrateful piece of crap, or like many of us, the ones that have Joseph Stalin attributes, or Stalin himself. And a little spoiled little brat thinks we should all revolve around him. I will continue on. Though that Tocqueville and Stalin were complementary and derisive, respectfully, a discussion of American exceptionalism built around certain accidents of history and geography missed the point. The ideas behind the First Amendment clauses limiting government action in the areas of the free speech and press were uniquely American. The First Amendment principle, as expressed in the Declaration of Independence, that people are sovereign with a natural right to express their thoughts both personally and institutionally, was exceptional. Freedom of the press in England, though, is often referred to as the source of the American Bill of Rights. The English Bill of Rights of 1689 made no provisions for freedom of the press. There was a long history of licensing of the press in England. It had been done by kings. With the rise of parliamentary sovereignty, it was done by Parliament dating from 1643, with provisions for pre-publication censorship of the press. Besides licensing laws that gave the English government control over who could operate a printing press as a respect to the government, there was the common law crime of seditious libel. A seditious libel was printed statements that bring into hatred or contempt the monarch or heirs or the government or the administration of justice. Seditious libel also included incitement to people to change any matter of church or state established by law, except by lawful means, or the promotion of discontent among British subjects. The potential penalty for printing such material was life in prison. The exceptional concept that a free press was a necessary element of representative government was not born of English tradition. Freedom of the press, natural incident of representative government. The English limitations on the press were inconsistent with developing theories of American government. The theory started with the premises in the Declaration of Independence, and natural outcome resulted in the necessity of a press unrestricted by government. Every individual is sovereign over his own person with natural inalienable rights. 2. People join together and form governments to protect those rights. 3. Management of government of a large society is best done by representation and granting limited power to the government for the purpose of protecting rights. 4. Ultimately, the individual, through his representatives, retains sovereignty over the government. 5. As a sovereign, the individual remains equal to his representatives. He attains a freedom of speech equal to the representative. 6. In a small community, an individual is likely to know his representative and have the ability to make informed electoral decisions. 7. As communities grow ever larger and elected officials represent more people, having personal knowledge to make informed decisions regarding representation becomes more difficult. 8. The decimation of knowledge among large communities is best achieved by a free and open press. 9. Freedom of the press is an institutional necessity to achieve a properly representative government. From natural law premise of individual sovereignty, freedom of the press becomes an initiative principle. This progression of thought resulted in these words was the First Amendment added to the Constitution in 1791. Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of the press. There was an exceptional doctrine and the basis for American exceptionalism. It was not the result of Americans living on the frontier as de Quilleville described. It was a result of underlying philosophy that served as the basis for America. The Sedition Act of 1798. Although the First Amendment was ratified in 1791, the concept of seditious libel remained alive in some places. The Sedition Act of 1789 was passed while the Federalists controlled Congress and John Adams was in the White House. The act made the following activity a crime with a potential penalty of 5 years in prison: to write, print, utter, or publish, or cause it to be done, or assist in it, any false, scandalous, malicious writing against the government of the United States or either House of Congress or the President with an intent to defame or bring either into contempt or disrepute, or to excite against either of the hatred of the people of the United States. The act mirrored much of British seditious libel law, but did add an American concept of truth as a defense. James Madison understood that this law did not comport with the First Amendment. It would seem a mockery to say that no laws should be passed for preventing publications from being made, but that laws might be passed for punishing them in case they should be made. The passage of the act resulted in a flurry of publications regarding the true meaning of freedom of the press in the Republic. Among the most influential was Tunis Wortsman, a treatise concerning political inquiry and the liberty of the press. Wortman, Madison, Jefferson, and others expounded on the First Amendment's intended broad press protections and the constitutional nature of the act. And you can look, there's links on here, you can check it out for yourselves, my friends. During the next 2 years, 25 people were arrested for publishing statements in violation of the law. 11 went to trial and 10 were convicted. The act was a central issue in the election of 1800. John Adams and the Federalists were thrown out of office. Thomas Jefferson became president and pardoned all those convicted under the act. The American people, by virtue of their vote, had found the act unconstitutional. John Adams did make a mistake. I will say that. It doesn't mean he's always wrong. But that one there, he made a big mistake. The Supreme Court and the freedom of the press. The first case involving press freedom came before the U.S. Supreme Court in 1931 in Neer versus Minnesota, and overturned a Minnesota law that classified certain types of publications as a nuisance. Since then, the court has consistently placed a high premium on press freedom, with jurisprudence consistent with the writers of 1789 to 1800. The Supreme Court cases from Neer to New York Times versus Sullivan to the Pentagon Papers have been very solicitous of the rights of the press. The court has recognized the press function in a free republic to be critical and given institutional protections that recognize the press as almost a fourth branch of government. These protections are philosophically in line with those of Madison and Jefferson and the opponents of the Sedition Act of 1789. Freedom of the press and American exceptionalism. When people speak of American exceptionalism, it is most often in reference to ideas such as a manifest destiny, conquering of the West, the Monroe Doctrine, and other historical matters which have brought the United States to a position of world leadership. Even de Tocqueville's references were related to practicality and the American frontier. These thoughts miss the point. The basic element of the exceptional nature of America is the philosophy of individual sovereignty that leads to principles like freedom of the press. And it's that initial principle that leads to all else. First Amendment, freedom of the press, discussion with Fred Tablet. On Constitution Speaking, a discussion had with former Vanderbilt professor Fred Tablet about the First Amendment with a focus on the freedom of the press. A discussion including points about the Zenger trial and the details of the Lithuanian battle over a television tower that was set in motion in the dissolution of the Soviet Union can be heard here. So there's links, there's plenty of information you can look at. And this is why, my friends, it is a natural born right to publish whatever you want. There's no exceptions. The Sedition Act of 1798 was the biggest mistake the Federalists made, and John Adams signed into law. It was null and void. And it's trying to repeat it as we see it. Even you got these dodo brains in the Senate like Dianne Feinstein wants to license journalists. To hell with you, you pathetic wench. This is totally be censored. Doesn't matter what political party you in. You gotta examine everything more thoroughly. There's a lot of stuff out there I don't even read, but has the right to be published. Even the fake news. Yeah, they have the right to publish it. If they don't have merit, why should I read it? I'll just wipe my butt on it. But you know what? They don't need to be thrown in jail. They'll burn themselves. And you got folks out there that want to harass live streamers, podcasters out in the fields. There's one gentleman a few days ago at Standing Rock got arrested for live streaming. Busted his hip. It's on Twitter. You can see it for yourselves. The police that are involved are not more than delegated Uncle Toms and Angel Mamas to the state. No exceptions. What, because you say that's your job? Yes, boss. Bend over. How far, boss? That's right. So I'm not going after the police as a whole, but those individuals that were involved. You should just toss in your badge, and go, I am not constitutionally inclined to represent. How dare you, bunch of pigs that you are. So those are some of the things you have to really look at, friends. And folks and journalists getting shot for being investigated, getting killed. The war on the press, war on journalism. And they try to throw people like them in jail. Pathetic. That's just an example of what's going on. And the people of the United States, you have that right. No ands, ifs, or buts. If they say you need a permit for recording, give them a penile microphone in their mouth. Go talk on this. What do you mean? What do you mean? So you're mumbling, you're gargling, and don't worry, it's not sexual harassment either. This particular right, you are born with it, regardless what those yahoos have to say. If they don't like it, tell them Cuba's down that way. Get the hell out of my country. Go to Cuba. Go to China. And I'm going to continue on here with the free speech by the same gentleman. As we read here, the U.S. Constitution's first 10 amendments are called the Bill of Rights. The First Amendment limits the authority of government to enact laws infringing upon natural rights of the people to practice religion, engage in speech, publish their ideas, assemble together to petition their government. Freedom of religion is the first name of freedom. Second name, freedom, speech, has its roots in the philosophy underlying American government. The American concept of free speech grew from a convergence of natural law, individual sovereignty, the need for free and open discussion in Congress, and the right to serve in Congress. When it was added to the Bill of Rights, American free speech was unlike any right that existed anywhere in the world. This can be said for the First Amendment's 3 additional rights: press, assembly, and petition for redress. First Amendment's free speech command: Congress shall make no law abridging of freedom of speech. A radical American idea: free speech for everyone. The Declaration of Independence reference to the laws of nature and nature's God demonstrate the importance of natural law. Theory and the genesis of the United States. Individual sovereignty is a component of natural law. This sovereignty is the underpinning of the legitimacy of the United States and ultimately the right to free speech. At America's founding, the idea of free speech for the general population was a radical idea. Freedom of speech historically belonged to the ruling class. Yeah, all those little glam boys and glam girls that think they're powerful than everybody else. Little history lesson here, my friends. There are references to free speech through history. The wild Roman senators exercised freedom of speech in the 5th century BC or BCE. The laws of 12 tables mention no right for free speech for the general population. Speech or expression through history followed this pattern. Ruling class speech received protections, but speech by the general population was subject to regulation by the ruling class. And remember, they're trying to do this right now in Washington, D.C. or in your local towns and states. I will get to that later. The English Bill of Rights of 1689, the English Bill of Rights of 1689, is sometimes referred to an inspiration for the United States Bill of Rights. Acceptance of this Bill of Rights was a condition to King William and Queen Mary becoming the rulers of England and placed limits on their authority. The bill was a major step forward towards establishing Parliament's supremacy and sovereignty. Though the English document shares a title with the U.S. Constitution's first 10 amendments, the concepts embodied are worlds apart. Regarding free speech, the 1689 English Bill of Rights provides that freedom of speech and debates or proceedings in Parliament ought not to be impeached or questioned in any court or place out of Parliament. This provision recognized free speech for members of Parliament. It did nothing for the king's other subjects. As in ancient Rome, free speech belonged to the ruling class. The laws of seditious libel and slander fully protected the ruling class. So back then, the peasants will get screwed, but these folks, the conglomerates, the glamour folks, flamboyants, will say, oh, but we're more powerful than you. We can say whatever we want. You got idiots right now that claim to be lawyers in office, think they're all high and mighty with their used car salesman rhetoric. And I will continue on here. The truth was no defense to slander or seditious libel in England. The 17th century English law of slander provided for money damages in civil lawsuits for harm to another's reputation. Criticism of a member of Parliament was slander. The criticism's truth did not matter. In fact, if a criticism were true, the damages awarded might be greater because a true damaging statement was thought to do more harm to a noble's reputation than a false statement. The English Bill of Rights did nothing for free speech of commoners. They could be sent to jail or have their property taken for speech. This was the state of English law at the founding of the United States. There was no free speech. The U.S. Constitution's speech or debate clause to promote free and open discussion in any issue that might come before the United States Congress. Article 1, Section 6, Clause 1 of the U.S. Constitution states in part, for any speech or debate in either House, Senator and Representatives shall not be questioned in any other place. The speech or debate clause bears a striking resemblance to the 1689 English provision protecting members of Parliament. Unlike the British Parliament, the American Congress is neither sovereign nor supreme. The members of Congress are elected by the people. The people retain their individual sovereignty and the rights to choose members of Congress and the right to compete to become a member of Congress. A historical lesson dating from the Roman Senate to the Parliaments of 1689 Bill of Rights demonstrate the value of protecting legislators from either civil damages or criminal prosecution for statements made in the course of debating national laws. As James Wilson put it, in order to enable and encourage a representative of the public and to discharge his public trust with firmness and success, it is indispensably necessary that he enjoy the fullest liberty of speech. Speech or debate clause leads to American freedom of speech. In societies prior to the United States, power, wisdom, and sovereignty flowed from the rulers of society, which imposed its will on the rest of the populace. In the philosophical design of the United States, power, wisdom, and sovereignty lie with the people, who granted limited authority to the government. A congressman was no better than any other citizen, and any other citizen possessed the legal right to compete in the arena of ideas to become a congressman. Speech or debate clause was indispensably necessary to conduct of congressional business, as every citizen could compete to be in Congress. It was also indispensably necessary that every citizen possess a comparable freedom. Yes, I got a little tongue tie there. It's all right. If a citizen's speech were not protected, an untenable circumstance would arise. During an election, an incumbent congressman could freely criticize his opponent, absent restriction on governmental interference with a private citizen's speech. A citizen candidate could not criticize his opponent. The sitting congressman, without fear of punishment, the broad coverage of American free speech sprung from the confluence of natural law, individual sovereignty, the need for free and open debate in Congress, and the right to serve in Congress. Its origin were uniquely American. American free speech reverses the English Bill of Rights. The English Bill of Rights gave parliamentary speech protection and acknowledged the supremacy and sovereignty of Parliament. In the United States, with the founders' commitment to a republican government, this purpose was just the opposite. James Madison was clear. If we advert to the nature of the republican government, we shall find that the censorial power is in the people over the government, and not in the government over the people. Free speech has limits, but its origin should be our guide. Free speech has never been without limits. In the classic example, one may not falsely yell fire in a crowded theater. There remain limits set by the civil law of libel and defamation. It is perjury to lie under oath in court. There are among the practical limits in a civil society. The true roots of American free speech should not be forgotten. Founders' respect for natural law, personal sovereignty, and liberty, and the principle that government officials should have no greater rights combined to limit government authority to interfere with the free speech of any citizen. My dog wants to chit-chat with other playmates here. That's all right. 1. Declaration's opening paragraph. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for over one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another and to assume among the power of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the cause which impelled them to the separation. This is number 2. John Locke's exposition of natural law were a major influence on America's founders. For Locke, natural law begins with the proposition that in a natural state, a human being owns himself and the products of his labor, property. All these things, a human is naturally sovereign and possessor of natural rights. Human voluntary forms governments to protect those rights, relinquishing elements of sovereignty. Because certain opinions might be destructive of society that humans had voluntarily joined, voicing such opinions was not necessarily protected and could be prohibited and punished by government. Though American free speech grew from natural law, it was not the direct product of Locke. 3. Historically, sovereignty was the attribute of government to make and enforce law effective within the confines of a defined geography. Natural law persists that all men in the state of nature are sovereign over themselves, and that they consent to relinquish portions of that sovereignty to secure society's protection of aspects of sovereignty rights that are retained or in fact cannot be given up because they are inalienable. 4. These laws, certain aspects of civil and criminal procedure for Rome, bearing some relation to a constitution, but the Constitution of Rome was largely unwritten and composed of tradition. References to speech rights are not to be found in the 12 tables. 5. Seditious libel is criticism of the government, either oral or written, and a crime. In England, at a time of the American Revolution, punishment for seditious libel was potentially life in prison. 6. Slander is an oral defamation or disparaging remark about someone told on one or more persons which harm the reputation of the person defamed. Slander may be the basis of civil lawsuit to recover money damages for harm to reputation. As American law developed, slander needed to be a false statement, and the truth became an absolute defense of civil damages. In the 17th century, England did not matter if the statement was false, only that it harmed another's reputation. During that time, even with the Americans, if you slander somebody, if that person finds out, they call you out and challenge you to a duel. If you don't accept it, he will ridicule you, your admittance of being a yellow, cowardly dog. I think it should be happening right now. 7. Wilson, among a few signers of both Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, he was one of the original 6 members of the Supreme Court appointed by George Washington. 8. It apparently was not clear to the members of the 5th Congress and President Adams. The Alien Seditions Act of 1798 made criticism of the government of a federal crime and resulted in many prominent Americans being jailed. Resistance to the law resulted in some threats of secession, and the famous Virginia and Kentucky resolutions authored by Madison Thomas Jefferson. These resolutions stand as an argument today for the right of a state to nullify unconstitutional federal law. The election of 1800 turned into a referendum on the acts, and Adams was tossed from office. New President Jefferson pardoned those convicted under the acts. The acts expired by their own term, but no case ever reached to the Supreme Court. Yes, my friends, like I said before, the past is today's greatest teacher. And when you hear other laws or actually referendums they're trying to shove down our throats, you gotta study your history. This is why the Bill of Rights culture is essential. You were born with them, they can never take them away. They can never seize your rights, but you can change governments. You gotta let these yahoos know they need us more, we need them. If they don't want to fulfill the obligation, you tell them to take an effing hike. It's not my fault you got a bunch of weak, pathetic students right now. They had to think they're something and they're not. You gotta do it on a local level too, including myself. I boldly admit that. You can go further. Pursue. Exercise. I get stuff on, watch a lot of these videos and people share stuff. I mean, I thank them dearly on this because I have friends out there. We have different political views, but we have a lot in common. We do give a damn on what's going on in this country and the states and local governments. But this is why, when it comes to free speech, people. So one person that recently passed, God bless his soul, David Paulian, said to me on the phone, "Brother, when it comes to free speech, you really know how to implement it." I laughed and thank you, brother. That was really cool what he said. So, speaking of free speech and the press and all that, there's some interesting stuff that's happening with, excuse me here, from the Free Speech Radio Network. Came out today. There's a download audio if you don't want to hear my voice, so what the hell. Minnesota, Arizona led states to advance any protest bill to GOP-dominated legislators. Reid said as protests and public dissent in the U.S. swell to levels not seen since the Vietnam War. Some state legislators are considering doctrine anti-protest laws. This week, lawmakers in Arizona and Minnesota advanced measures that would penalize certain types of civil disobedience. Jared Gallo reports from Minneapolis. Amid cries of shame, shame, a set of bills advanced in the Minnesota state legislators Wednesday that would increase penalties for protesters who block highways, mass transit systems, or access to an airport. The legislation categorized those acts of civil disobedience as gross misdemeanors, punishable up to a year in jail and a $3,000 fine. They are part of the national trend of Republican-controlled legislators taking up anti-protest bills since January, explains Spencer Woodman, a freelance journalist who has covered the issue for The Intercept. Good, decent website. You should check it out, folks. Woodman says it's no coincidence these measures are emerging just as protests against Trump administration's policies sweep the country. I think the implications are pretty clear. These kinds of new criminal penalties for protesting can have a very concrete effect in terms of people saying, that I don't want to risk it. I am not going to show up. I'm not going to make my voice heard because it could result in years of prison time or thousands of dollars in civil fines or both. So yeah, I think the implication and the aim of these anti-protest laws are pretty clear, and this to keep people home. In Arizona, the state Senate passed a bill this week that even goes further, making participations in or organizing protests that turns into a, quote, riot, an offense that could lead to criminal racketeering charges. That means authorities could potentially seize protest organizers' assets and property. Read your Arizona state constitution, you bunch of confounded illiterates. In North Dakota, the site of the stand-up protest, a bill that would have allowed drivers who injure or kill someone intentionally blocking traffic to escape liability was defeated by the House of Representatives last week. Proposed measures to severely restrict demonstrations have recently failed in Virginia and Michigan. Other anti-protest bills are still pending across the country, notably in Missouri and Colorado. In most cases, the bill's authors have explicitly said that the measures are in response to specific demonstrations that block highways. In Minnesota, Twin Cities were rocked by weeks of highway blocking protests last summer following the death of a young black man, Philando Costa, who was fatally shot by an officer during a traffic stop. That officer, Geronimo, with the J, Yanez, is now facing second-degree manslaughter charges. Jason Soda, president of the Minneapolis NAACP, sees the bill in Minnesota as a direct response to this protest. They haven't appreciated our efforts to create equity, so of course they're going to keep responding the way they know how, and that's backlash and further oppression. So points out, with a Trump presidency, I'm not surprised that they're going to keep passing legislation that further oppresses. Hey, don't worry, my friend. The Democrats do the same thing. Oh, yeah. They got a lot of freedom haters in that party as well. Wednesday's hearing grew more emotional when John Thompson, a friend and former co-worker of Philando Castile, addressed one of the bill's authors, State Representative Nick Zuras. So if you want to stop protesting, sir, stop giving as a reason to protest, please, Thompson exclaims. Because until then, so you can charge me with a felony, I'll be on these streets protesting you and white supremacy, sir. I won't even say white supremacy. That's a little bit irrelevant, but that's just free speech. I call it tyranny, tyrannical supremacy, not being politically correct, because tyranny comes across all avenues. The ACLU argues that many of these anti-protest bills violate the rights to free speech and peaceful protests guaranteed by the First Amendment. But anti-abortion bills passed in many of the same states show that the GOP-dominated legislatures have been very effective at testing the boundaries of constitutional rights, or at least limiting them in practice until the Supreme Court intervenes. Well, like I said, your natural-born rights are guaranteed under certain state constitutions as well, my friends. Just read it. It's self-explanatory. I studied these confounded constitutions from other states a long time. They're very identical. And in addition, if you read Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution, if you want to be statehood of the United States, you have to honor the United States Constitution as the supreme law of the land and their oath of office to defend both the U.S. and their state constitution before they get installed in power. This is really mind-boggling. Yes, you're going to have your knuckleheads out there, don't get me wrong. But that free speech is honorable. But if you go up to people, start trying to get them out of their vehicles, then you're not peacefully protesting. You're violating someone's space. Okay? Plain and simple. That's being under attack from all sides, even with the protesters being hired to go out there. I see it myself. I see what happened to Milo at Berkeley. They out there go, oh yeah, how victorious. No, it's not. It's downright unacceptable. It doesn't matter what you look like, what you believe in, what's your heritage or gender, etc. If you mess with someone's rights, of free speech, natural born rights, you're infringing on mine. Then you become the enemy. Don't even go there, because it will blow back in your faces when least expected. I will go on. It's interesting here from Talk Network. I try to get the video up, but looks like I have some download issues. I'm going to add that to the memo. And it's interesting about dangerous rise of political correctness. Does free speech offend you? And it's really good. It's a really good video. It's from John Prager University. Yeah, I remember John Prager, I think his name is, or Jerry Prager. Conservative, but he has a lot of great points. You can check it out yourselves. It's very, very good. And I'm going to add another one here. It's by KrisAnne Hall, where she's been actually checking her out, and she's fantastic. Okay, and she talks about 7.5 minute video about the First Amendment and about the 5 contains of individual liberty, which is freedom of speech, religion, speech, press, assembly, and redress. And it has all these here on the on that on here. And this is really great because give you right here about what she wrote, which has a lot of merit, and you can actually look this up yourselves, okay? Did you know the Supreme Court believes being offensive and politically incorrect is protected by the First Amendment? A bedrock principle underlying the First Amendment is that government may not prohibit the expression of an idea simply because society finds the idea itself offensive or disagreeable. Texas versus Johnson, that's in 1989. If I'm correct, he burned the American flag at the convention. He's a member of the Communist Party of America. I'm not impressed. The guy's a stooge, as far as I'm concerned. He's like Glamboyne. He always wants to pray himself, I burned the American flag, ha, ha, ha. Who the hell cares? But he has that right for free speech. Plain and simple. And it was interesting because, like I said, I take the initiative to hear some of his views about imperialism and all that. And you know what? I agree with him on that. I'm against an empire too, my friend. All right. But funny thing about one of the things I'm not too keen with communism, one of the main things, central banking. According to Communist Manifesto. We got the Federal Reserve. That's communist. Communistic. And I'll continue on here. Hate speech is protected by the First Amendment. St. Paul, Minnesota passed an ordinance that banned hate speech, any expression such as burning cross or swastika that might arouse anger, alarm, or resentment in others on the basis of race, color, religion, or gender. The Supreme Court struck the ordinance down as unconstitutionally discriminating based on the content of expression. That's RAV, R-A-V, versus St. Paul, 1992. Folks, you can look this up yourselves, man. Trust me. Arresting peaceful protesters for disorderly conduct is unconstitutional. Arresting, convicting, and punishing protesters who are peacefully assembled where there was no violence or threat of violence on their part is a violation of free speech, free assembly, and freedom to petition. Edwards versus South Carolina, 1963. The High Court ruled that peaceful demonstrators may not be prosecuted for disorderly conduct. This case also secured streets and sidewalk as public forums. Hogg versus CIO, 1939. Arresting peaceful protesters for disobeying order to leave is unconstitutional and police must protect protesters over safety of public. To let a policeman's command become equivalent to a criminal statute comes dangerously near making our government one of men rather than of laws. There are ample ways to protect the domestic tranquility without subjecting First Amendment freedoms to such a clumsy and unwieldy weapon. Officers must take a reasonable effort to protect demonstrators. Gregory versus Chicago, 1969. I can make that statement. They try to tell me to be off the sidewalks. I had a damn right to be there without threatening anybody and having a good discussion. I'm not afraid to call out these people. If the police officers better start reading and listening to my voice and looking this up. And don't get me wrong, there's a couple of them out there I do. They are very good at it. Local government must provide police in such numbers as in their professional judgment are required to afford adequate protection to protesters. Dunlap versus the City of Chicago, 1977. And there's a thing, too, called a sovereign immunity tort liability. Something I really got to look up. Trust me, very about the police protection myth. A police officer has the duty not to ratify or effectuate a heckler's veto, nor may he join a morally mob intent on suppressing ideas. Instead, he must take reasonable action to protect from violence persons exercising the constitutional rights. Glasson versus the City of Louisville, 1975. Powerful stuff. Interesting cases. like I said, trust me on KrisAnne Hall. She's really good, I have to say. And there's a link for that too. You can download her rights, First Amendment sheet, and she get an actual Defense and Liberty free ebook. Something everyone should check out, even myself, because I'm still learning, and I get to be more methodical and enhance people's knowledge on this. And this is why, my friends, the First Amendment, whether it's the press or speech, etc., they're natural. You don't need permission. You don't need to ask permission to government to get a permit for speaking your mind. You can have an assembly at a public park and speak your views, and they can't say a damn thing to you. Plain and simple. Doesn't matter what your partisan views are. Doesn't matter if you're even with the Occupy, Tea Party, Antifa, neo-Nazis, doesn't matter, or New Black Panthers. I'll make sure their right to free speech will not perish. If I do, I create a precedent that could affect me as well. That's why I'm real critical when a lot of these folks brag about when they shut down an event to violate someone's free speech or beat someone up for speaking their mind without they're not even threatening you. And you think you achieved something? You haven't achieved anything. You just committed treason, as far as I'm concerned. I dare you refute me on this. You better have merit. Don't be a stagnant parrot. Okay? This is what I'm about. If you don't like it, I could care less. If you're going to give me some little candy-ass comments, I'll just take a dump on it, because that's how I think of your rhetorical attributes. Okay? Enough said. I'm done. I'd like to thank everyone for listening to this episode. Plus, feel free to download and share this throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or you want to send me something that's interesting and I want to check out, whatever you do, please send your correspondences with decorum. You can hit me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Tumblr, YouTube, Scene.life, Freedoms Network, and Minds.com. Or you can email me at lokiluck3@gmail.com. I am going to look like I'm going to be getting a couple other email addresses I will present in future episodes, okay? But that's how I see the world. This is how I examine what I think, how the United States, America, is a constitutional republic and nothing else. I don't believe in mob rule. I believe in natural-born rights, principles. That's my true nature. I'm pretty consistent. Hey, there's folks I have disagreements with, but you know what? I can have a great discussion, and we have homage. We pay homage or fidelity to one another. And you never know. May have this together one day. Common interest is essential. All right? Okay. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading the love. And may your guardian spirits be with you.